What's going on, everybody? Today we're back with the associated DB10 no prep drag car. In the first video, I took and converted the DB10 into the base of what a no prep drag car is normally seen as, and that's basically a short course truck with narrowed front and rear arms, rubber drag tires, and then just starting to do a little bit of tuning and things like that. In this case, I changed out the rear shocks to a shorter body and shaft, which makes it the same length as the front shocks. When I narrowed it, I also had to do some things like changing turnbuckles up front and in the rear, and including some shorter rear dog bones. Pretty simple conversion in the first steps. This week, I've been working on a number of other modifications just to get ready, as well as just playing with the car some more and feeling it out, tuning some things, changing some things out that I think may be helpful. This is not my area of expertise. I just think that this is going to be a really fun market, and I've got some friends who have a decent amount of knowledge and have had some good luck in their no prep racing, so leaning on them heavily for some suggestions on things that I should do. The first thing that I did this week is I replaced all of the bearings in the car with a set of ceramic bearings from Fast Eddie bearings. The goal of changing out those stock ball bearings to a set of ceramic is just to reduce drag. While I was going through the process of changing out all of those bearings, I was given a tip to actually clean out the grease that's inside of them and just use some oil basically. I've got a little RPM bearing blaster. It's a little molded clamshell piece. You put the bearing in the middle and you can actually clean it out with like a WD-40 style straw that goes in the top. Works really well, and the bearings do spin even smoother. They are ceramic bearings, so of course you'll need to just make sure you maintain them, make sure nothing is seizing up, and that they're well oiled. There's pre-made bearing kits for the associated DB10 on Fast Eddie's site. You can go there and get regular rubber shielded ball bearing sets, or you can get the ceramic sets like I did. I'll link to both of those in the description below in case you're interested. Last week after I narrowed the truck, I did have to change out the turnbuckles throughout, and while I was doing that, I kind of just eyeballed lengths, making sure that they matched, but not necessarily making sure that my camber was in good shape all the way around. So that was another task that I went through this week. Using my camber gauge, I just went through and made sure that the tires never went past perfectly vertical no matter what the suspension travel was in. So they'll always be a little bit tipped in, if not perfectly up and down. That's just a kind of neutral starting point, I figure, something that I can definitely tune for more of a ride height situation as we go. Maybe since this car doesn't sit at more of a neutral ride height and really low, I can take and tune that camber so that it's vertical at basically ride height. We'll see. I'm not sure that that specific part of it is going to be something that's so important at my skill level yet, but you know, as we go, as we learn, definitely things like that we might be able to pick up. In general, I'm just trying to give myself a base of a vehicle here that is neutral enough that I can try and learn from it and go from there. The next thing that I worked on was something that John Schultz from Associated really pushed me to do, and that was to get a sway bar installed in the rear. Now, he's played around with a number of sway bars and a number of different style setups, and he suggested a fairly firm sway bar. So I decided to use one of the Vanquish Yeti sway bars and modified that. Now, I actually have a number of spring steels that work with that sway bar, so I have the ability to play around with that if I don't like the stock wire size. After installing it in the vehicle and kind of feeling how it works, I think that it'll be okay. There's enough torsion in the length that it has there, still probably flexible enough. I think it's going to be a fine starting point for me, at least. The Yeti sway bar in stock configuration is much wider than this vehicle is made for. So I actually had to cut that down, grind a new flat in the actual torsion rod. Pretty simple process. I cut one side and then filed a new flat, trying to make sure that the sway bar arms were as parallel as possible without any weight on them. I also had to cut a little bit of length off of the end of the sway bar, as it would have interfered with the top shaft on the passenger side of this vehicle. There's 3 holes on that sway bar in stock form. I just cut the last 2 off, filed it as smooth as possible, and then bolted my end links to the one existing hole and snapped it onto the ball cup that's molded into these rear arms. The wire diameter on that sway bar is larger than the shock tower on this vehicle is also made for, so I took one of my round files and just opened that up a little bit. I also didn't have the clamps that are used to hold the sway bar in place. Not 100% sure what part number that would have been through Associated. It's not something that I really looked at. It was something that I just saw that I didn't have and decided to make my own from some aluminum sheet that I had here. One thing you may notice is I have different rear tires on here right now. These are the regular Hoosier drag slicks. These are the non-belted tires. There's a reason that they're on here right now, and that's because I have glued the other tires to the wheels that I had on here previously, which were the belted version, which are the reaction tires from Proline. Now, being that I'm not the most talented tire gluer, it doesn't look the best. So for purposes of video, we've got a nice fresh set of tires on the vehicle. I also have another set of reaction tires and wheels that I could use also, but you know, for now I figured matching the Hoosiers to the front Hoosiers looks good for pictures. One other thing that I started for this week was a rear wing. Now I got some 60 thousandths thick polycarbonate and cut it out. I made a template to go all the way up to this, you know, fuel cell tank looking area on the back of the bed. So the piece slides all the way in and butts up against it. At least that's where it's at for now. Maybe if I think that it doesn't look great, I'll trim it to the upper bed line on this and then attach it just within that area. But I think that that more flat surface on the rear will help. I do have a sheet metal brake, but it's at the shop. So in order to kind of put the kick up in the rear wing, I just clamped it down with a piece of aluminum on the board that I have in here that I used to drill into, and then just bent it up by hand simply. I put a pretty shallow bend on it for now. I can always rebend it if I need to, and then I shot it with some black paint. That is still drying right now though. Once it's done, I'll start getting it attached to the body, and then lastly, I'll make the side boards, or whatever the real name for those is, that go on the sides of the body and kind of, you know, butt up to the ends of the wing. We're gonna keep it pretty simple as far as that goes. Beyond that, I have been shopping for some items that I think may help me in this endeavor, being that this isn't a side of the hobby that I've really ever had interest in before, meaning, you know, go fast cars or drag cars, basically anything without solid axles and four-wheel drive. I honestly just don't have a lot of parts and accessories for this type of vehicle. So I needed to pick up things like some diff oil. I don't have that. Everything I have has locked diffs. I wanted to get a little bit heavier oil, or, you know, something other than just grease in this rear differential. So I did disassemble that and I filled it with some 60,000 weight. Now I know that a lot of guys are running a nearly locked rear end, but for me, talking with John, he was saying that if I wanted to try and, you know, make it launch a little bit easier, at least for me at this point, maybe go with something a little lighter. The fully locked or almost fully locked setups seem to be faster at the top end of the track. But for me, I probably need to focus on the launch. So I picked up 4 different weights of Team Associated diff oil. That'll allow me to kind of tune a little bit more, hopefully get comfortable, and then I can kind of step up as I learn and get this car going the best I probably can. I also picked up a number of 48 pitch pinions for this vehicle, as well as a little pinion caddy. Picked all this up on A-Main. This is their ProTech pinion caddy. It'll be something that I can use to just do a little bit of tuning or having any idea what a drag car is going to launch like. I also picked up an infrared thermometer just to, you know, check motor, tires, pavement, the cat, who knows. It's got a laser on it and pointed at all kinds of stuff. And lastly, I splurged a little bit and picked myself up a set of corner scales. I am not saying that this is needed at all. I've always wanted a set, even for the scale trucks and things like that. It's just another gadget. I love gadgets. So I bought them, picked them up at A-Main. It's the Sky RC one. They've got a couple of different ones. This one was the least expensive version, but you know, it's fun to play with. So threw the car on the scales. I was pretty surprised actually. The car is set up perfectly 50-50 and then 70-30 split front to rear. Now that all depends a little bit on where you set the ride height, but I set it fairly close to where I think it will sit when it's on the line. No idea if that's anywhere close to where it will be when it's actually performing possibly well or not, who knows. It's just where it sits right now. We are in the rainy season right now up here in Northern California, so it's not exactly the most convenient time to try and go, you know, do any testing with this, and it gets dark at like 5 o'clock, so gonna have to find the right time of day, the right day that it's not raining, go out and do a test. More than anything, I just want to see if it moves in any sort of a straight line, and if this thing has enough power to hit the wheelie bar. And while the rules do state 2S LiPo for racing, I currently have a 3S LiPo in here right now, just because I'm running that stock system. So a little bit of extra power as far as that goes, I think will be just fine. One other bit of news to touch on is that I do believe that in the next revision of the No Prep RC rules, that bodies like this one may be legal. And I actually really like the style of this body. I think it's just fun. Associated does sell a clear version of this, so I think that's something that I may look into. I do have that Proline Nova body. Still an option, still something I could do, but everybody's going to be running that Proline Nova. It looks good enough that I totally understand it. But maybe I stick with the stock body because that's more original. But no matter what, we're going to have some fun. Even just playing around with it on the bench so far has been a fun change of pace. Definitely something I'm looking forward to. Get a group of friends out, hopefully go have some fun around here in Northern California, and then finding other events as well. RC drag racing has definitely been around for a long time, but it's never exactly gotten big. And right now it seems like it's doing pretty well as far as popularity goes. So hopefully, this wave of people coming into it and bringing some, more content and awareness about the segment of RC, to kind of the media that a lot of us follow will be a positive thing for the sport. Because comparing the amount of content that's available for RC drag racing, specifically no prep, I guess, and comparing that to, scale trail trucks and things like that, they're definitely nowhere near the same level. But hopefully it continues to rise because growth in the hobby is good for everybody. But with that update on the car, guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Hit the like button if you enjoy these videos. Subscribe if you're not already. Hit the notification bell so you see the videos as soon as they get uploaded. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you guys on the next one.